It seems like the city slowly but surely getting back to normal. What do you think that new normal looks like now? And can the economy now get back on track?
Well, I think there's a lot of optimism around, but I think it's going to be a steep climb, particularly when you look at the unemployment rate amongst the SMEs. And as you know, Hong Kong, over 50% of the workforce is employed by the SMEs. So, it'll be a struggle, but I guess with a bit of luck, it might take us, the better part of 12 months, 18 months, and hopefully the virus doesn't come back in the meantime.
Do you think the government is doing enough for those SMEs right now, Ron? I mean, this is a city that doesn't have bankruptcy protection. We've seen some stimulus come into the fray here, granting about $80,000 for some of the retailers out there to keep businesses afloat. Do you think it's enough?
I think the almost $35 billion US package that the government put out, I don't think has found its way fully into the economy as yet. But as you've heard, our Finance Secretary, Paul Chan, has indicated that, if that's not enough, they're prepared to come out with more relief. So, let's hope we don't need it. But the government, I think, so far has done a pretty good job, both in terms of the economic relief to the economy as well as controlling the virus and keeping the numbers down. Hong Kong people, of course, played a very, very important role. They had the experience in 2003 of SARS. So, wearing face masks and, social distancing, washing hands and all that probably is ingrained into our DNA.
Ron, it's Tom here in Beijing. What do you think the prospects are of renewed protests, and how would you expect the government to respond if people do start going back onto the streets on a regular basis?
I think the protests really started last year out of the now abandoned extradition bill. And I think the pro-democracy supporters and the politicians seem to have taken advantage of that. But I hope that at the end of the day, common sense will prevail in terms of you're getting back into the Legislative Council. Particularly, there's going to be an election in September this year, and really to work for the people. It's one thing fighting for democracy, but another thing if it goes beyond the pale and disturbs job prospects and the economy and so forth, that would not be good for the ordinary folks in Hong Kong.
Yeah, Ron, part of the tension, of course, is what many see as Beijing's overreach in Hong Kong, and Beijing's liaison office saying that it isn't subject to Article 22 of the Basic Law. And of course, Article 22 will and is meant to prevent any department of the central government from interfering in the territory's internal affairs. Is that a correct interpretation of the law as you see it? Is the liaison office correct that they can get involved in the internal affairs of Hong Kong?
I've not looked into it deeply, and that's not that's not my speciality, if I could put it that way. But I think all of us remember that from time to time, foreign governments like the UK government or the US government have made their comments about Hong Kong, if they can make comments, then why can't Beijing make comments? I mean, I find that a bit surprising, seeing that we are one China.
Ron, it seems like we were speaking of Michael Tian just a couple of days ago, and he was saying look, when it comes to mainland tourists coming to Hong Kong, he's expecting half of what we used to see. We've seen a lack of Chinese buyers coming into the property market as well. I mean, is this just a signal of Hong Kong's economic importance dwindling in the eyes of the mainland Chinese?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Simply because I think if you look in the global financial center network and time zones, we're probably one of the most important Asian financial hubs there is. I mean, Japan and Tokyo obviously plays a big part as well, but the Japanese entry into the global financial network is largely domestic as opposed to international like we are. So you have lots of mainland companies, Hong Kong companies, as well as overseas companies listed on the Hong Kong Exchange. And in terms of banking, etc., and all that, we have over 170 foreign banks in Hong Kong, and the list goes on.
What are you expecting when it comes to the September elections then? What's really in store now, do you think, Ron?
I think it'll be tight. It'll be, it could well be that the Democrats might get us a majority, a small majority, or the pro-establishment might hold it. From what my friends are telling me, it's not a given that the Democrats would acquire a majority. But then, as I said, at the end of the day, even if they do acquire a majority, and they try to use all sorts of filibustering technique to slow things down, they really still need to do things like pass the budget, pass laws, because that is their function. Their function is not to bring Hong Kong to a halt. That would be a terrible indictment on democracy if that was the purpose.
Ron, the government is discussing, or at least there have been reports that they're looking again at reintroducing the national security law. Would they be right to do that, and will you expect them to be successful if they go down that path?
I don't think it will happen in this term because there's only 2.5 months left on the calendar, and I don't imagine they would be able to do the right consultation within this time frame. But I think under the new Legislative Council post September 2020, they would have another almost 2 years to do it, and that might be the right time to do it. Now, whether they can get the right numbers, of course, to some extent depends also on the election results.
Are you concerned about, I mean, we've been talking, of course, a lot about the tensions, this re-escalation of tensions between Beijing and Washington over the origins of the virus. Are you concerned that if we get to a situation where the Trump administration is looking at reimposing tariffs, that Hong Kong is again hit by that as another potential headwind for the city?
Well, obviously, trade wars doesn't do any good, and there are really no winners. But it is election year in the U.S., and during election year, sometimes strange things and unexpected things happen. But I hope that common sense will prevail, and that if Mr. Trump gets reelected, there could be new dialogue on the trade front. As well as on other issues. If a new administration comes in, the issue has been around long enough, and Mr. Biden, the Democratic candidate, knows China and knows Hong Kong well, and knows the U.S. and China relationship important. So, I'm cautiously optimistic that post-election, there might be a firmer and a clearer path for the two countries.